Hey all, it's the 28th of September 2025, and we have double trouble in the Western Atlantic with Hurricane Humberto over here to the east. That is a Category 5 major hurricane with 140 knot sustained winds. That's 160 miles an hour. Symmetric 25 nautical mile wide eye, very cold cloud tops down to minus 78 Celsius. Over to the west, we've got Tropical Depression 9, which is a big disorganized system, but really a problem for Cuba into the Bahamas and potentially the eastern United States too. Let's take a look at them. Let's take a closer look at that infrared view of Hurricane Humberto. So the cloud top temperatures are estimated to be down to minus 70 to minus 80 Celsius. You can tell that because it's gone into the red in the infrared. So the infrared is detecting the temperature. Down in the bottom right, you can see the minus 70 to minus 80 is the red to light red. If we were seeing some yellows in the middle of those reds, that would mean the temperatures of the cloud tops were down below minus 80. We're not quite seeing that at the moment, but it is super cold cloud tops. Really good dual outflow channels, well ventilated system too. Here's the latest National Hurricane Center forecast track map. Our National Hurricane Center are predicting eyewall replacement cycles, so that means fluctuations in intensity. It's probably up high right now, then it may go down, then as it goes through the eyewall cycle, reduce a little bit, but still those M's are there out to Tuesday. That means M is for major hurricane. You can see the storm starting to recurve right round as it's going recurving near Bermuda. Let's see if there is a chance of a direct hit on Bermuda or not. Here is the hurricane wharf. This one is the 18 UTC September 27th run. The 0 UTC 28th is coming in right now, so I may be able to check that by the end of the video. Let's look at this anyway. It is initializing the storm at around 120 to 130 knots. It's getting up there. The color bar is the wind speeds, estimated 10-meter wind speeds. As we go forward, you'll see that the storm maintains major hurricane intensity as we go through Monday and into Tuesday. We also begin to see the island of Bermuda popping in. Let's just look out for it. I think it's coming in any moment now. Have I missed it? Where is it? I missed it. There it is. Just down in the bottom right, there's Bermuda. So actually, in the Hurricane Wharf last case that was run, it actually misses Bermuda, and Bermuda is just tucking into where you get tropical storm force winds. So large surf being the major hazard there. Just in the last few minutes, the latest run of the Hurricane Wharf has completed in terms of the graphics output on Tropical Tidbits anyway. So the 0 UTC September 28th run, this is it. You can see it initializes the storm a little stronger than the previous run, probably up there getting into those, initializing it based on that higher intensity of 140 knots Category 5. So let's move it forward. We'll see the storm very similar, probably just a fraction stronger than the previous run, and then maybe some indications of a eyewall replacement cycle. We'll see Bermuda also tuck in just to the bottom right again. There we see it, and pretty similar to the last run, but actually a little further away in this case. Let's take a look at some of the other tracks of the other models. Just to quickly note that the closest passage to Bermuda is around probably then, which is a 09 UTC, so middle of the night Bermuda time, or early hours of the morning, Wednesday, October 1st. It looks to me like there's pretty good agreement amongst the models on the track, really good agreement actually, even beyond the passage close to Bermuda. So I think we can be pretty confident that the storm will miss Bermuda and it will turn away from the United States and Canada and move across the Atlantic. There are a few rogue runs, as there always are, but I think these are probably safe to ignore, these ones that go off towards Florida. So yeah, pretty confident it's going to miss Bermuda to the west and miss the US to the east, and then recurve across the Atlantic. Let's see if it will affect Europe potentially. That's way too far off, but we'll have a look anyway. Looking at the European Center model, we're going to have to go for the big broad view now. We're looking at the whole North Atlantic with the UK on the right and then the US on the left. Hurricane Humberto is down here. So let's just move forward and we'll see the storm recurving. There's a tiny little dot in here, that's Bermuda. So we'll see it go past Bermuda to the left, start to turn around, and then progress across the Atlantic. Now, it does remain a pretty strong storm after Bermuda, according to the European Center model. Perhaps it's becoming a post-tropical, wow, that is actually really quite an intense storm that's being predicted by the European Center model. However, it is far from land at that point. I'm just going to go back to that in a moment because I want to see those wind speeds at that point. It does eventually make its way across the Atlantic and impact into Scotland, but that is by next weekend. So let's go back to that little peak in wind speeds that the European Center model was showing in the mid-Atlantic. It was kind of interesting. I'm going to zoom in and just check those. What on earth? Those are 96 knots sustained in the middle of the Atlantic. That is a very strong system. So perhaps it will get this second bump after a brief weakening phase after it passes Bermuda. We shall see. I'll check one of the other models to see if that's any consistency there. I'll switch to the GFS at that time period, see what it looks like. It looks kind of different. It's also recurving Tropical Depression 1, which will have now been a tropical hurricane and a tropical storm. We'll look at that in a moment. Okay, so interesting systems. All right, let's move away from Humberto and move over to Tropical Depression 9 over here, menacing the Bahamas and Cuba. A broad, disorganized center. Convection is not well wrapped yet. Lots of deep convection. Now we're beginning to see those yellows, so some of this deep convection is really pumping up there down to minus 80 Celsius. That is just to the south of Bermuda. We'll check the lightning in a moment because these must be firing quite heavily in regard to lightning. Conditions are favorable and the National Hurricane Center are expecting this to develop into a hurricane, so we better take a close look at it. First of all, let's check the lightning. Yeah, there we go. We can see the group energy density from the lightning strikes kind of on the southern flank of that convective line to the south of Cuba. Moving towards Jamaica, actually. Jamaica is getting some pretty serious nocturnal thunderstorms. Kind of looks like it's on the southern flank of the range. Anyway, we better get moving on towards the forecast for this system, as it does pose a significant threat going forward. Here is the official forecast track from the National Hurricane Center. The blues indicate that tropical storm warning is in effect for the Bahamas, where the center has been determined to be in the southern region of the Bahama Islands. As we move forward, a tropical storm watch is in effect in the yellow for the eastern coast of central Florida. And then the storm comes up and then takes this turn to the right. Now this looks a little bit uncertain, and I believe that it is determined somewhat differently by different models. Let's check out the storm following high resolution Hurricane Wharf simulation. Here it has initialized the storm center around this time at the point is just north of Cuba here, and then these are the islands of the Bahamas, the southern Bahamas. If you see the greens, that indicates tropical storm force winds. If it gets into the purples, that means hurricane force. Let's move it forward as we go through Sunday. You'll see that it becomes a tropical storm, pretty significant one, as it moves towards the central and northern Bahamas. We see a big sweep of tropical storm force winds covering the northern Bahamas islands, hence that tropical storm warning in effect. The circulation becomes better distinct, more compact as we head into Monday. This is overnight on Sunday into Monday. We begin to see a little bit of purple appearing by Monday. That is indicating that it's becoming Category 1 hurricane in this simulation. Then it weakens back to tropical storm. And you can see it really coming up close to the Florida coast, but not making landfall. There we see a little bit more of the hurricane purple winds on the southwestern flank of the storm, and then it seems to maintain that Category 1, Category 2 intensity, and then it makes that turn away from the US. Now, as we go forward, you'll actually see again the little blip of Bermuda coming in. Let's just skip it forward until we see it. Let's see, there it is. It's the same mark. So there is that familiar shape of Bermuda coming in. So this storm is another potential problem for Bermuda, potentially a bigger problem than Humberto. Let's see the timing there. So the timing is That's Friday, so yeah, that's Thursday, Friday night, it getting close to Bermuda in this simulation. Let's see if the other tracks are consistent. Here are the forecast tracks for a variety of other models, including the hurricane wharf in there somewhere. The majority of the models take it up towards 30 north and then taking this sharp turn to the east. Now, there is a lot of uncertainty here because the reason why it's going north is it's getting pulled north by an approaching trough. So if it moves north faster, there'll be more interaction with that trough, bringing the storm closer to the Carolinas with increasing chance of impact in the eastern US. However, if it moves slower, develops slower further to the it goes a bit slower, that will miss the trough, so it wouldn't be dragged north as much. It would turn east sooner and move away from the US. So yeah, there's still some uncertainty here. It does look like a lot of models are in agreement with it taking up to 30 north and then taking this jump to the east, but we'll have to see. It needs to determine its center first because it's not even formed yet. To see that trough, here are the winds at 7,000 meters about. This is 400 hectopascals pressure. So yeah, around 7,000 meters altitude. The trough is here, and that's the thing which is pulling the storm, which is barely noticeable down here in the Bahamas, pulling that north. As we move forward, you're going to see that trough moving off to the east. And so this is why it needs to develop. If it develops more slowly, moves north more slowly, then there'll be less pulling from that trough because the trough is eventually moving away. But it does look like the storm in the European center model is actually coming closer to the US. Let's take a look at the surface winds. The other complication is that there may be some interaction between these two systems. Here's Humberto off to the east, and then our developing storm over the Bahamas. This is the European center model, and we'll see the storm coming quite close to South Carolina by Tuesday as it's beginning to make that turn. Oh my goodness, it is pretty close. So this is actually bringing quite strong winds just off the coast, 50 knots. So sustained tropical storm force winds just off the coast in the European center model. Getting quite strong, stalling, slow movement, so quite a long period of time. They're kind of along the coast winds, and then it does make that turn off to the east. Yeah, so it's going to be very interesting to watch over the next 24 hours to see how the center gathers itself together. So, I mean, looking at that simulation, it does stall somewhat right close to South Carolina, which means really heavy rainfall and potential flood risk if it takes that track close to the coast. Let's just see what the European Center model is doing in terms of total rainfall. This is actually the 3 hourly rain as we head into Monday. And you can see bands of rain coming across South Carolina, Georgia, into North Carolina, but it's really when the system comes up close that we see persistent heavy rain along the coast. And the problem with this is that the storm is stalling at this point as we go 3 hours by 3 hours, the maintenance of really, really heavy rainfall. I will compare this with another model just to see if this is consistent across the two main models, but that does sustain for quite a period of time. We'll take a look at the rain totals next, and then eventually it does move off. So particularly for South Carolina in this model, it does look like pretty extreme rainfall. Let's take a look at the totals. Here is the European Center model total rainfall. If we drag the bar, we'll get the simulation total as the simulation progresses. You begin to see the totals mount up in South Carolina. I'll put a little pointer in to see actually how much rain this model is predicting, but it is quite a lot. As we go through the, let's go up to Thursday, and I'll put a little pointer in here. So yeah, 200 millimeters, pretty substantial rainfall along a long section of the coast. But let's check out the GFS to see what it predicts. So the GFS, the Global Forecasting System model, is a little bit less, but it is still bringing in very heavy rain into South Carolina, about half as much as the European Center model, but you can see it's a coarser resolution simulation being provided here by Windy. So overall, the predictions are for this system to have a pretty broad impact from Cuba through the Bahamas into eastern Florida and South Carolina and other areas of the eastern United States. Mudslides possible in the Cuba mountains. And so in closing, Humberto is a powerful but recurving Mostly ocean impact, but major hurricane. But it's TD9, Tropical Depression 9, which is disorganized now, but is forecast to intensify, become probably a low-end hurricane, but we shall see what kind of impacts it ends up having, looking like heavy rain across a large area. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.